I desensitized myself to it.
Welcome to WatchMojo, and today we're looking at the most depraved killer confessions that shocked us.
Tried to make Mr. Otero as comfortable as I could.
Dennis Neilson, a former civil servant and one of Britain's most notorious serial killers. Dennis Neilson was apprehended in 1983. Upon his arrest, he quickly confessed to the murders of 15 young men, all committed between 1978 and 1983.
He enjoyed doing it, and I think it's that enjoyment that he got from that first murder that propelled him to kill again and again and again.
Neilson lured men to his North London flats with promises of food or shelter, subsequently strangling and drowning them. His confessions were horrifying, revealing grisly acts on the remains.
I have to believe that he was going to do something. He was trying to asphyxiate me.
Neilson's openness about his gruesome crimes shocked the public and law enforcement, providing a harrowing glimpse into his disturbed psyche and the horrors that transpired behind closed doors.
He's nothing. He's a liar. He's taken human lives.
Richard Ramirez. The Night Stalker terrified Southern California during the mid-1980s.
Richard Ramirez's whole trip was to hide in a tree or hide behind a fence and watch his victims at nighttime.
His reign of terror ended with his arrest in 1985. During his trial, Ramirez exhibited disturbing behavior, including showing no remorse and making satanic gestures. He confessed to a series of heinous crimes, including 13 murders, numerous assaults, and burglaries.
Why on earth would you have hurt those people? Why did you kill those people?
No comments. I cannot answer that at this time.
His confessions were marked by terrifying details of his brutal attacks, which involved random victims and acts of extreme violence and torture. Ramirez's lack of remorse and his macabre fascination with Satanism added to the horror of his crimes, painting a portrait of a deeply disturbed and dangerous individual.
His description eludes me, but I have felt powers that are evil.
His trial captivated the nation, exposing the extent of his depravity and brutality.
I don't care about myself, really. I don't care about what happens to me. I never did, really.
Richard Kinsky, the infamous Iceman, was a contract killer linked to over 200 murders, although that figure may be exaggerated.
He murdered by guns. He murdered by strangulation. He murdered by putting poison on victims' food.
Arrested in 1986, Kuklinski's confessions were as cold as his moniker, laying out a career of murder for hire while working for various crime families. Kuklinski earned his nickname by freezing his victims' bodies to obscure the time of death.
How do you feel about killing?
I don't. It doesn't bother me. It doesn't bother me at all. I don't have a feeling one way or the other.
His confessions revealed a methodical and ruthless approach, using techniques ranging from cyanide poisoning to brute force. Kuklinski's lack of remorse and matter-of-fact recounting of his crimes shocked investigators and the public alike.
I've done it always. As far as you've known or heard, there isn't too many things I haven't tried.
His calculated, emotionless demeanor during his revelations painted a terrifying picture of a man who killed without hesitation or conscience, solidifying his place as one of America's most notorious hitmen.
And that's when it happened one Christmas Eve.
Ed Kemper, the co-ed killer, terrorized California in the early 1970s.
He presented as a very personable, appealing young man. Attractive. There were no signs or symptoms of any overt mental illness.
Arrested in 1973, Kemper voluntarily confessed to the brutal murders of 10 people, including his grandparents, his mother, and 6 young women he picked up while hitchhiking. His confessions were disturbingly detailed, revealing his method of luring unsuspecting targets into his car, using his imposing 6'9" stature to overpower them.
The first 24 hours, there were 3 clear times I should have been busted, and I wasn't.
He also spoke about the psychological torment he endured, leading to his final act of killing his mother.
My mother was a sick, angry, hungry, and very sad woman. I hated her. But I wanted to love my mother.
Kemper's articulate and cooperative nature during his questioning provided a rare insight into the mind of a serial killer, horrifying investigators and the public with his calm recounting of his monstrous deeds.
If my parole had been successful, I believe I'd be married, I'd have children, I'd be heading toward my first grandchildren.
Samuel Little, America's most prolific serial killer, confessed to a staggering 93 murders committed between 1970 and 2005.
We reported on him here last night, and tonight the FBI is now asking for your help in identifying additional victims.
Arrested in 2012, his confessions came during a series of interviews with the FBI. Little provided ornate accounts of his crimes, vividly describing how he targeted vulnerable women, often strangling them.
Seen the sign say Little Woods. So I took off the exit, went, and that sure enough was the road leading into the woods.
These were corroborated by cold case evidence, revealing his method of avoiding detection by preying on marginalized individuals whose deaths were frequently misclassified.
So I pulled up in concealed the car in that little vegetation up there on top of the hill.
Little's recollections and sketches of his victims helped authorities solve numerous cold cases, bringing some closure to families. His remorseless and methodical recounting of the murders painted a portrait of a predator who evaded justice for decades.
What could you see from there?
I could see the highway, and in the woods is that way.
Eileen Wuornos. Referred to as America's first female serial killer, Eileen Wuornos confessed to the murders of 7 men in Florida between 1989 and 1990.
I still have to say to myself, I still say that it was a self-defense.
Arrested in 1991, her confessions were marked by claims of self-defense, stating that her victims had either attacked or attempted to attack her while she was working as a sex worker. Wuornos talked about how she shot each man at point-blank range, providing graphic details of the encounters.
And didn't think about running back in a car or anything.
Her demeanor fluctuated between anger and despair during her recountings, reflecting a tumultuous life marred by abuse and instability. Wuornos' subsequent trial captivated the nation, highlighting the complexities of her character and the circumstances that led to her becoming a notorious serial killer.
I never provoked those guys. I never provoked them. I never showed any provocations whatsoever. It was very nice, very decent, very clean.
John Wayne Gacy. This killer clown confessed to the murders of 33 young men and boys in the 1970s.
13 years ago, he told the police how he murdered his victims. Now he's telling me he never did.
Arrested in 1978, Gacy's confessions were harrowing, revealing how he lured his victims to his home with promises of work or socializing.
Don't look at me as an innocent babe of the wood.
Once there, he would handcuff and strangle them, usually performing sexual acts before and after death. Gacy buried most of the bodies in the crawl space beneath his house, with others disposed of in a nearby river. His demeanor further shocked investigators and the public, as he described his acts with a bone-chilling lack of remorse. Gacy's dual life as a respected community member and a brutal killer added a disturbing layer to his revelations. Dennis Rader. The BTK murderer confessed to a series of 10 murders committed between 1974 and 1991 in Wichita, Kansas.
BTK stood for bind, torture, kill, and that was his MO.
Arrested in 2005, Rader's confessions were detached and methodical.
Had you planned this beforehand?
To some degree, yes.
He recounted how he stalked his targets, meticulously planning their abductions and murders. He also outlined his modus operandi of binding, torturing, and ultimately killing his victims, taking souvenirs and sending taunting letters to the police and media. He unveiled his crimes with a deeply disturbing lack of emotion, revealing a methodical and remorseless killer.
But once you lock in on a certain person, then you become stalking. And that might be several of them, but you really home in on that person.
Rader's dual life as a church leader and family man contrasted sharply with his heinous crimes, shocking the community and providing a terrifying glimpse into the mind of a serial killer.
Were you wearing any kind of disguise or mask at this time?
No.
Ted Bundy. One of America's most infamous serial killers, Bundy confessed to the murders of over 30 young women across multiple states between 1974 and 1978.
As I was looking at it, I saw this figure dressed in black, all black, raise his arm up over his head. He had a log in it that he had picked up, a piece of firewood.
Arrested in 1978, Bundy's confessions came in the days leading up to his execution in 1989.
It's important to me, and the people believe what I'm saying.
He provided excruciating details about how he lured women with charm and deceit while pretending to be injured or impersonating authority figures. Bundy traced his methods of kidnapping and murdering his victims, then disposing of their bodies in remote locations.
In the past few days, myself and a number of investigators have been talking about unsolved cases, murders that I was involved in.
It was a cold, calculated recounting of his crimes, revealing a monstrously disturbed individual. Bundy's admissions helped solve numerous cold cases, while also solidifying his notoriety.
Especially at first. Enormous amount of horror, guilt, remorse afterwards. But then that impulse to do it again would come back even stronger.
Before we continue, be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos. You have the option to be notified for occasional videos or all of them. If you're on your phone, make sure you go into your settings and switch on notifications. Jeffrey Dahmer. Known as the Milwaukee Cannibal, Dahmer confessed to the gruesome murders of 17 young men between 1978 and 1991. Arrested in 1991,
Bill, when I sat down opposite Jeffrey Dahmer for this interview, I wondered what he would tell me, how hard it would be to get him to discuss his horrific crimes.
Dahmer's confessions were shockingly detailed, revealing a horrifying pattern of luring victims to his apartment, where he would drug, sexually assault, and strangle them.
I was coming back from the shopping mall back in '78. I had fantasies about picking up a hitchhiker and taking him back to the house. And
he also admitted to performing unspeakable post-mortem acts on the bodies. Dahmer's calm and emotionless recounting of his crimes provided insights into his disturbed psyche as he ruminated on his twisted compulsion to control and possess his victims.
Did you like feeling evil?
No, I didn't. But I had tried to overcome the thoughts, and it worked for a while, but eventually I gave in.
Dahmer's admissions helped investigators piece together the extent of his atrocities and expose the depths of his depravity.
It was a way of making me feel that they were a part of me.
What other disturbing confessions could have made this list? Tell us in the comments.
Back when I was smart, I would let them come to me. This remote area.